Hi everyone, this is Melvin coming to you from the comfort of my own home. I'm happy to be able to share with you today's word. We're going to talk about Matthew, actually part of the Sermon of the Mount, and we're going to talk about the part that talks about retaliation. And it's found in Matthew 5:38 to 42, and this is what it says. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. Now to me, this is a countercultural verse. Talk about something that doesn't make sense. Right? I mean, there's many things that don't make sense within the Bible, but talk about something that really doesn't make sense. I mean, this is so very hard to do. How can we retaliate? How can we react to violence done against us in that way? How can we do that? It says here, do not resist an evildoer. That doesn't even make sense. Aren't we Christians supposed to fight against those things? Then doesn't it say in Ephesians that we're supposed to fight against evil and darkness and principalities and strongholds, that we don't fight against flesh and blood, but against the principalities, the spirits of darkness? Doesn't it say that in Ephesians? Why then does it say here, do not resist an evildoer? Doesn't it, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't align very well. Well, I think it doesn't make sense because the way we see this is resisting. Actually, in this verse, I believe resisting actually meant paying back, right? We're talking about retaliation. Right in verse 38, it said an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's what you have heard it say. And so when it says do not resist an evildoer, it means do not repay evil with evil, right? Do not repay violence with violence. And so if it says that, it makes more sense. It doesn't necessarily mean passively allow for the injustice to happen. No, that is actually something that we are supposed to be against. We can't allow injustices in our world, right? We have to speak against those things and fight against those things. So it's not saying that, okay? It's saying do not repay evil with evil, violence with violence. That is not the way. It's not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And he says the answer is not doing that. The answer is when someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to the other also. And now this can be extremely hard. I mean, if someone insults me, my first reaction is to give him an insult. If someone hits me, my first reaction is to hit them. If someone hurts me, my first reaction is to hurt them. I mean, this verse is so countercultural. It goes against our normal human behavior, our normal human tendencies, what we normally would do in situations like that. But I think Jesus here is coming at something that is deeper, right? And we already said that it's not passively sitting back at the injustice, but it is actually, I believe, almost an act of defiance. To be able to turn your cheek to a violent person that hates you, to be able to turn your cheek is an act of defiance against that authority, or against that person, or against what they're doing as evil. How is this an act of defiance if you're just letting them hit you again? Well, let me explain. And during that time, during the time of Jesus, of course, and the Romans and the Jews, well, it was basically a right-handed world, right? If you were left-handed, you were probably a weirdo, and you were probably an outcast. But if you were obvious with it, but it's a right-handed world. People did things with their right hand, and they did things with their left hand that were seen unclean. The left hand was only for the unclean things that they had to do. For example, like wiping your butt, right? They used their left hands for that. Their right hand was the hand that did everything else. It did everything except for the unclean things. And so this, in order for you to hit someone on your right cheek, you would have to hit them with your back hand, right? Because you can't go like this, right? It would look weird If they hit you on the right cheek with your right hand, it would look like this. So most of the time, if someone hit you on your right cheek with their right hand, it would be a backhand, right? And this backhanded slap was almost like an insult. It should be seen as an insult, right? It's not a fair fight, right? If I punched you, that is a fair fight. Then actually, that was socially and actually even legally unacceptable during this time as well. You couldn't do that. You would have to pay something. You have to pay a fine. You would have to suffer consequences. So this was basically only done by people of authority, right? This was only done by people of authority. And during this time, that would mean masters to their slaves, husbands to their wives, Romans to Jews, right? They would only hit you like this if they were displeased with you with their right hand on your right cheek. It's a backhand. If they did it this way, it would almost say it's a fair fight. We are equals. We're equals, right? If they did it with their fist, it would be like saying we are equals on an equal playing field. And so you couldn't do that. So the way they would smack you on the right hand is this way. So, and the normal reaction you would get from a slave or wife or someone that was inferior is to scour away and do what they're told, or be fearful of the situation and let things happen, right? Just let it happen, let it go, you know? That would be the normal reaction that their master would anticipate. That's what they would expect. But here Jesus is saying no. If an evildoer is doing something, if they're doing something unjustly, turn your other cheek. Turn your other cheek. This would be an act of defiance. You're no longer being obedient to your master. You're no longer doing what they want you to do. You're giving them your other cheek. Now this would have probably confused any person that did that first slap, right? Because now they're giving you their left cheek, and you can't really slap their left cheek with a backhand again. So there are two options. Use your left hand, which meant that would mean this is an unclean job. This is something unclean, that I'm doing here. It would kind of reveal the evil within, right? So, and if I did this, it would be admitting that you are my equal, right? If I slapped you on the left like this, it would mean admitting that you are my equal. We are on an equal playing field. And so that's basically exposing the evil of that authority. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean when I say an act of defiance? They would be so perplexed. They would probably just send that slave off, or they would probably get that slave to suffer some consequences. But the slave already won, in a way. It already proved something. It proved that that person did something wrong. And so why do we turn the other cheek? Turning the other cheek is actually a sign of almost defiance against the unjust act, right? And giving your other coat would expose the evil. And if someone's suing you, all these things, they're more for exposure of evil. And Jesus was the clearest example of this. This sounds beautiful, right, on paper, but how does it look, you might ask? Well, Jesus, actually, he represented this so very well. It's amazing. His life. You see all his life. And the way that they treated him. He was a holy man after God, and he was preaching love all over the place. And after this verse, actually, it says to love your enemies. And that's an even deeper conversation that we might have next week. But what Jesus did was love on people, heal people, do these amazing, miraculous things. And what did he get in return? The authorities, they grabbed him and they tortured him. They did horrible things to him, and he received it all. And he would turn his other cheek. They did everything to him. They spit at him. They shamed him. They mocked him. Put a crown of thorns on him. Tore his beard. They were torturing the man And they kept him alive just to suffer the cross, just to suffer the cross before his death. And so Jesus did all this, and he exposed the evil within. He exposed the evil of humanity, the brokenness of humanity. How could we do that to Jesus? How could we do that to God? He was showing us how separated we are from him. He was showing us how far we are from our Lord, from God, our Creator. And with his sacrifice, now we're able to come to Jesus, and we're able to come to God and be reconciled with God. Let me tell you, the only answer to injustice, the only answer to the hatred within our hearts, the only answer to that is the love of Jesus Christ. The love of Jesus. In our homes, in our churches, in our cities, communities, in our country, the only answer is the love of God. That's the only thing that can solve our brokenness. So what can we do in light of this verse? Well, there's a couple of things we can do. Right? If we know that love is the only thing that can drive out hate, right? That's what Martin Luther King said. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only light can do that. Only love can do that, right? It's not quoted perfectly, but that's what he said. And we know that to be true with the things that we see in Scripture. If we know that, then do your best to spread the love of God towards your families, towards your communities, towards everyone around you. I think it's the best thing that you could possibly do. And pray for those that are suffering during this time. Pray for the families that are not feeling safe. Pray for the communities that are not feeling safe. Pray for our cities, because we need the protection of God in our lives. And I think those are genuine things that every Christian should be doing, is spreading the love of God, spreading the good news of Jesus Christ, and praying. So if you enjoyed this video, or if it blessed you in some sort of way, or if even you thought the conversation was interesting, hit the like button, comment below, subscribe to the channel, because this is the church channel, this is the Harvest channel, and here we offer our Sunday services as well, and some other content that you might be interested in. So please do that. I encourage you to do that, and I want you to have a blessed week, and for you to experience the love of God even more. Bless you.